The moment I stepped into the studio that morning, something felt off. Cameras were still, lights were dim, and even the air felt heavy, as if waiting for a storm. I was the assistant producer for Face the Nation Tonight, one of the most watched, liberal talk shows on TV, known for its fiery takes and controversial guests. But today, something was different. The previous night, a segment aired that was supposed to be a playful jab at Keanu Reeves. The host, Don Whitman, smirked his way through a mocking impersonation of Keanu's calm nature, his slow speech, and even made light of his past tragedies. The audience laughed, but I didn't. It didn't sit right with me. What none of us knew then was that the man we tried to poke fun at was about to unleash a storm we weren't ready for. That morning, Keanu didn't just post a reaction. He dropped a legal bombshell. A lawsuit worth $150 million had been filed against the network, and not just for defamation, but for something deeper, something darker. I sat frozen in the control room, my headset crackling with voices as news broke live on the monitors in front of me. Don Whitman was in the middle of his monologue when his teleprompter abruptly stopped. He looked confused, glancing off camera, then back at the audience, unaware that in real time, Keanu Reeves's legal team had issued a restraining order and a cease and desist against both him and the studio. That was just the beginning. Within minutes, the show's social media pages were flooded, not just with angry fans, but with former insiders. Old makeup artists, assistants, and even guest coordinators were coming forward with screenshots, voice recordings, and signed NDAs that revealed the host had been obsessed with mocking Keanu for months. One clip even showed Don practicing insults in his dressing room, referring to Keanu as Hollywood's monk freak and charity clown. The studio tried to scrub it all, but it was too late. The internet had taken it global. The worst part? I was there when the phone call came in. Keanu himself, not a lawyer, not a manager, but Keanu Reeves, called the studio line and asked to speak to the executive producer. His voice was calm, slow, and deeply serious. I happened to be the one who answered. "I'm not doing this for revenge," he said. "I'm doing this because I know what it feels like to lose everything, and your show laughed at that pain. I don't care about money. I care about the message." Before I could reply, he added something that shook me to my core. "This isn't just about me. Check your files. Look closer." I had no idea what he meant, but as I hung up, something inside me told me the real chaos hadn't even begun. And I was right. When I opened our internal drive under a mislabeled folder, one we thought had archived guest interviews, I found a video that had been hidden for months. It was raw footage from an unaired segment where Keanu had visited the studio privately last year, offering to talk about mental health and grief. He was calm, respectful, and heartfelt. But that interview was never aired. Don had called it too boring. He laughed about it afterward, saying, "Who wants to watch sad Keanu sob about his dead family? Ratings need blood." I couldn't breathe. I stared at the footage, Keanu talking with tears in his eyes, hoping to help others, but the world never saw it. That's when I realized this lawsuit wasn't just a celebrity tantrum. It was a reckoning. And what was coming next would expose the very soul of the media industry and destroy reputations forever. Keanu Reeves stepped off the studio set, with silence screaming in his ears. The lights that had just bathed him in judgmental brightness now faded behind him, casting long shadows down the hallway where I waited for him. My hands clenched the edge of my press badge, still warm from the intensity of the broadcast. He didn't speak at first, just walked past me slowly, his expression unreadable. But I knew something had changed in him. Inside that interview, he'd been mocked, pushed, and provoked by host Lyle Durham and his smug liberal panel, all while America watched. What they didn't expect, what no one expected, was that Keanu didn't just take it. He hit back with a silent weapon more powerful than any insult: the truth. And now, walking behind him toward the dressing room, I could sense the gravity of what he had just done. "You saw them twist it, right?" he finally said without turning his head. "They cut the story halfway through. They left out everything that mattered." I nodded, but before I could answer, one of the show's junior producers rushed past us in panic, mumbling into his headset, Legal team, but now get legal on the phone. We have a serious issue. I looked back at Keanu. He simply smirked and kept walking. But the war had started. Inside the dressing room, Keanu sat down without speaking. He pulled out his phone and opened a locked folder. "You know what they didn't let me say?" he whispered. "They didn't let me mention the Veterans Fund. They redirected, or the sick kids they used for ratings and never paid." He paused, then looked up at me. "They lied, and now they'll pay." My throat tightened. This wasn't just a celebrity lashing out after a bad interview. Keanu had something. Proof, evidence, receipts. My heart raced as he turned the screen toward me. Leaked emails, shell company transactions, contracts with forged signatures, names that would ruin careers. "They think I'm just an actor," he said softly. "But they forgot who they're dealing with." Just then his phone buzzed again. A message flashed on the screen. "Studio execs are meeting. They want to settle. Urgent." Keanu didn't even blink. Too late. Within the hour, news started to leak. TMZ first reported an explosive backstage altercation following Keanu's interview, but they didn't know the half of it. I stood beside him as he made the call to his lawyer, a calm but cold voice saying only, "File it, all of it, full lawsuit, no mercy." The next morning, headlines screamed, "Keanu Reeves sues network after on-air smear," and chaos erupted. The network tried to downplay it, calling it a misunderstanding, but Keanu wasn't interested in apologies. He wanted change. And justice. As I sat beside him during the first legal meeting, I learned just how deep the corruption went. This wasn't just about one segment. This was about an entire system built to humiliate, distort, and destroy. But here's where it twisted again. Just when it seemed Keanu had the upper hand, the network struck back. They leaked a story claiming he had broken the contract by recording private conversations on set. It was their attempt to paint him as the villain. "They think they're clever," Keanu said, shaking his head. "But they don't know I have, something they never saw coming." I asked him what he meant, but he didn't answer. Not yet. That night I got a call from someone who refused to give their name. "Tell Keanu not to show up at the court hearing. For his own good." The Yoab line went dead. My hands trembled. We were no longer just in a lawsuit. This was war. And Keanu, he wasn't backing down. Not this time. The moment I entered the studio office with Keanu, I could sense the tension cutting through the air like a knife. The receptionist, who had been giggling on the phone, went silent as her eyes locked on us, more specifically on Keanu. "He's back," she whispered under her breath before quickly disappearing into the hallway. We followed the dim corridor lined with framed pictures of famous liberal guests and loud headlines. Every photo screamed arrogance. Keanu didn't say a word. He just stared at them, not with anger, but with a quiet power, the kind that makes the guilty squirm. We reached the conference room where the executives sat, fake smiles plastered on their faces, surrounded by lawyers who thought they could bury truth with paperwork. "Let's make this quick," the lead producer said, clearly annoyed. Keanu placed a folder on the table, thick, worn, and terrifyingly silent. "You know what's in here," he said calmly. "Emails, audio, footage you thought was deleted." The color drained from the man's face. I could see his lips tremble as he reached for a water bottle with shaking hands. I didn't know the full extent of what Keanu had uncovered, but from the way they reacted, it was more than a lawsuit, it was an earthquake. "You're bluffing," one of the producers hissed. Keanu leaned forward. "Then sue me for defamation. Go ahead." Silence. Everyone looked at each other, waiting for someone to make the first move. Suddenly, a woman on their legal team stood up and walked out. "I'm not part of this," she muttered, holding back tears. That's when Keanu turned to me and whispered, something I'll never forget. "They crossed a line they can't erase. But I'm not just here for revenge. I'm here for every actor, veteran, and single parent they mocked to get ratings." Before anyone could respond, a voice boomed from behind us. "Turn off the cameras now." It was the network's CEO, And the look on his face wasn't one of leadership, it was pure fear. But what he didn't realize was that the cameras were already rolling, privately, and what Keanu had planned next would not only dismantle their show but drag every skeleton they had into the daylight, and the public was hungry for truth. Everything was about to collapse. As Keanu Reeves and I stepped out of the courtroom, where the Liberal Network's legal team had just attempted to twist the facts with a smug grin, I caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure slipping out through the back door, someone who clearly didn't want to be seen. Keanu paused, glanced in that direction, then without a word, started walking toward the alley behind the courthouse. I followed him without question. What we found there changed everything. A former producer from the Liberal TV show, disheveled and visibly shaken, handed Keanu a flash drive. "They used me," he said, voice trembling. "I was ordered to doctor footage and cut segments to destroy your image. And someone else was involved, someone bigger." Before Keanu could ask more, the man vanished into the crowd. We rushed back to Keanu's car and plugged the flash drive into his encrypted laptop. What we saw stunned us. Raw behind-the-scenes footage of the show's host mocking veterans, laughing at disabled children, and bragging about canceling Keanu with fake edits. But even more shocking was a hidden file labeled White House tie. I glanced at Keanu. "This goes beyond the network," I whispered. He nodded grimly. "We're not fighting just a show. We're fighting a machine." Keanu sent the footage to his private legal team and forwarded a copy to Tucker Carlson, who'd quietly been tracking the media's backdoor alliances. That night, we were scheduled to appear on Tucker's broadcast, but as we pulled up to the studio, a black SUV blocked our way and 4 men in suits approached, flashing federal badges. "Mr. Reeves, you need to come with us. Now." Keanu didn't flinch. He simply looked at me and said, "Keep recording, no matter what happens." As they placed him in the vehicle, one of the agents whispered to me, "He's about to blow open something the world was never supposed to see." My hands shook as I hit record on my phone. The real war had just begun. I watched helplessly as the black SUV disappeared into traffic with Keanu inside, leaving behind only a faint trail of exhaust and a heart-pounding silence. I jumped into my own car and began tailing them from a distance, my phone still recording, heart racing with the fear of losing him or worse. After nearly an hour of weaving through narrow alleys and underpasses, the SUV turned into an unmarked government facility, surrounded by high walls, security cameras, and men who looked more military than federal. I parked a block away and used a drone I kept in my trunk for moments exactly like this. Through the drone's lens, I saw Keanu being led through a steel door by agents, until one of them looked straight up at my drone, smiled coldly, and pointed. Within seconds, the signal jammed and the feed went black. I called Tucker Carlson in a panic, and his first words chilled me. They moved faster than I expected. "You need to leak the footage now before they disappear him." I uploaded the files onto a secure cloud, encrypted it, and sent access to 3 trusted contacts. One of them a retired NSA analyst who owed me a favor from years ago. Meanwhile, inside the facility, Keanu was being interrogated not about the lawsuit, but about that file, White House tie. The agents demanded to know who gave him the drive and what else he knew. Keanu, ever calm, stared them down. "You're not scared of what I know," he said. "You're terrified the world will know." Suddenly, the lead interrogator slammed a folder on the table. Inside were surveillance images of the TV host meeting with a high-ranking government official in a private jet, one who used to work under the Obama administration. The cover-up wasn't just about media manipulation. It was tied to a massive illegal surveillance operation on celebrities who refused to play along. Keanu asked for a lawyer. They laughed. "You're not in a court now. You're in a zone that doesn't exist." But back outside, I was making my move. I disguised myself as a delivery guy, sneaked through a side entrance using an old ID badge from a previous documentary I shot there, and found my way to the building's lower levels. Through a narrow vent, I heard Keanu's voice, calm, fearless, and laced with fire. "You think silencing me will protect your lies? Game over. The world's already watching." And they were. I had just gone live with the footage from the flash drive. All over the internet, the unedited clips exploded, showing the liberal hosts' vile behavior and the manipulation at the heart of their media empire. The hashtag Keanu exposed truth was trending worldwide. But inside that dark facility, none of them knew it yet, and they were seconds away from doing something that would change Keanu's life forever. I pressed myself deeper into the shadowed hallway, heart pounding as the muffled voices from the interrogation room grew sharper. Through the vent, I saw Keanu still chained to the metal chair, a gash forming on his cheek from a blow they must have delivered after cutting the cameras. But he didn't flinch. His stare burned into the agent's soul like fire through paper. Then the lead interrogator received a call. He turned pale. "It's out," he muttered. "The footage, it's everywhere." Keanu smirked. "Told you the game was over." I knew that meant the internet had detonated with what I'd leaked. Clips, showing the liberal TV host mocking veterans behind the scenes, calling the public sheep, and even joking about fabricating political narratives for ratings. But what shocked the world the most was a hidden camera recording from a private fundraiser. Barack Obama and the same host laughing while discussing how to neutralize dissent in Hollywood, with Keanu Reeves' name specifically mentioned. The outrage was instant. Social media was ablaze. Protesters gathered outside the TV studio within an hour. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. But back in that building, panic was just beginning. The agents turned on each other. One demanded orders from above, another wanted to cut the loose ends, and a third, clearly shaken, suggested letting Keanu go before this turned into a bloodbath. Suddenly, I heard footsteps, coming straight toward my hiding spot. I ducked into a storage room and hid behind stacked crates, 2 armed. N entered, whispering, "He's here, the guy who leaked it. They traced the drone. He's in the building." My heart dropped. They were talking about me. I texted Tucker a single word: compromised. Seconds later, my phone vibrated. A call. Not from Tucker, from a blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. "If you want to survive," the voice said, "get to sub-level 3. There's someone there who'll protect you and Keanu." Click. I didn't know if it was a trap, but I had no choice. I made my way through the ventilation shafts until I found a rusted ladder leading down. The deeper I went, the colder it got. Sub-level 3 was unlike anything above. Flickering lights, rows of old surveillance monitors, and one figure sitting in the dark. As I stepped closer, he turned. It was the same NSA analyst I'd sent the footage to. "You're lucky," he said. "I used to help build this place before they buried it." He handed me a keycard. "You have one chance. Room 307. Get Keanu. I'll handle the exit." I sprinted up the corridor just as gunfire echoed above. The agents were turning on one another, thinking Keanu had more files, more secrets. I reached room 307 and opened the door. Keanu looked up, bloodied but smiling. "Took you long enough." I cut the zip ties. As we moved into the hallway, explosions rocked the building. Someone was destroying evidence, burning it all. But before we could escape, a figure blocked our path. Not an agent, not a guard. It was the liberal TV host himself, face twisted with fear and rage, holding a gun. "You ruined everything," he hissed. "You think exposing me is enough? You're just one actor. No one will believe the rest." Keanu stepped forward, fearless. "Then let's give them more to believe." What happened next, no one could have predicted. The liberal TV host's hand trembled as he pointed the gun at Keanu, sweat dripping from his forehead. His world was collapsing, and he knew it. "You think this ends with me?" he barked. "I have insurance files. I have leverage. If I go down, everyone does, including the people you think are clean." But Keanu didn't flinch. He calmly stepped between me and the gun, placing his hand slightly out, his voice quiet but thunderous with meaning. "Pull the trigger," Keanu said. "But know this, when your world burns, it won't be the truth that dies, it'll be your last piece of control." Just then, a second shot rang out, not from the host, but from behind us. The host collapsed, Instantly, shot clean in the shoulder. I spun around to see the NSA analyst from Sublevel 3, gun drawn. "You've got 5 minutes before the backup team storms in," he growled. "Go!" We ran. Keanu and I dashed through crumbling hallways, alarms wailing, sprinklers hissing from triggered fires and glass shattering from the chaos above. The deeper we went, the more secrets we saw. Rooms lined with servers, walls covered in blackmail, photos, classified folders with names that would shake the nation. Celebrities, senators, judges, people who appeared clean but were now exposed through Keanu's files. "They used entertainment," Keanu said breathlessly as we ran, to control emotions, rewrite memory, distract and divide. But they got greedy, and greedy people always get careless. We finally reached the extraction tunnel. A service elevator stood open with one last chance of escape. But as the doors began to close, 5 black-clad men emerged from the smoke. Behind us, government cleaners, faces covered, rifles drawn. "Get down!" I shouted, diving in front of Keanu as the elevator doors slammed shut. One bullet hit my arm. The pain was sharp, but adrenaline kept me upright. The elevator groaned as it ascended to the rooftop, the only exit left. Keanu wrapped my wound tightly with part of his ripped shirt and looked me dead in the eye. "We're not done. This doesn't end with a file drop. The world needs to know everything." I nodded through clenched teeth. As we reached the roof, a helicopter hovered above. The pilot, Tucker Carlson, gave a wild wave. "About time," he shouted as he lowered the rope ladder. But just as Keanu grabbed the rope, the building below erupted in flames. A self-destruct mechanism. The entire data complex was rigged to explode. And inside were still hundreds of files yet unreleased. "We have to go back," Keanu said. I grabbed his arm. "We won't make it, but maybe. We don't have to." I opened the small drive I'd stolen from room 307. It glowed green. It had a backup of the most dangerous contents. We climbed into the chopper, and as we lifted into the sky, the building exploded beneath us, erasing the entire facility from the world. "That building held secrets America wasn't ready to admit," Keanu said quietly. "But now it has no choice." What we didn't know then was that the fire wasn't enough to stop those in power. Someone survived. Someone dangerous. Someone who knew we had the last copy of everything, and they were coming for it. As the helicopter sliced through the smoky night, the weight of what we had just done began to settle in. Below us, the government's secret data facility was nothing but rubble, consumed by its own desperation to hide the truth. Keanu sat beside me in silence, his eyes locked on the glowing drive in my bloodied hand, the last living copy of the most explosive secrets America had never intended to reveal. Tucker Carlson flew with tense focus, occasionally glancing back at us, the urgency on his face impossible to miss. "You two just kicked the hornet's nest," he said through the headset. "They'll send the worst kind of men to clean this up." Keanu didn't respond. Instead, he opened a small compartment in his coat and pulled out an old, battered photo. It showed him, a young soldier standing with a man who looked eerily like a younger Barack Obama. "This is deeper than anyone knows," Keanu finally said. "It started decades ago, before Obama was president, before any of us were actors or journalists. It started with a plan, Operation Lazarus, a psychological warfare project meant to turn public trust into a weapon." My heart sank. "You were part of it?" He nodded slowly. "They recruited me in the late 80s, said I was perfect, charisma, clean image, no political ties. I thought I was helping the country. Turns out I was just another puppet in their theater. Until I broke out." I was about to respond when the helicopter violently jolted. "Incoming!" Tucker shouted. A missile streaked past, just missing us. "We've been locked onto." We veered sharply to the right, and through the smoke-filled sky, a black stealth drone emerged. It wasn't military, it was private. That meant someone with serious money and deep connections wanted us dead. "Hold on!" Tucker yelled as he pushed the chopper into a dive. We narrowly missed another missile. "There's a safe house just outside D.C. We can make it if they don't fry us first." Keanu reached into his bag and pulled out a small EMP launcher. He opened the hatch, aimed, and fired. The device exploded mid-air, disrupting the drone system, sending it crashing into a river below. But just when we thought we were safe, the radio crackled. A voice came through, calm, polished, and terrifying. "Mr. Reeves, you have what belongs to the Foundation. Return it, and you may still walk away. Refuse, and the countdown begins." Keanu's face went pale. That voice. I know that voice. I listened closely. It was Barack Obama. Not the voice we heard on TV, the real one. The man behind the curtain. "He's not just a puppet master," Keanu whispered. "He's the architect, and he knows we're coming." We landed on the outskirts of D.C., barely escaping a second wave of pursuit. The safe house was hidden beneath an abandoned church, lined with steel and lead to block surveillance. There we met a woman named Maria, an ex-CIA analyst who had gone dark 5 years ago after testifying against secret programs no one believed existed. She examined the drive and her hands began to shake. "This contains the Lazarus protocols," she gasped. "Mind control through entertainment, real-time emotion tracking via smart TVs, manufactured scandals, and this can't be real. Simulated voting results?" Keanu looked at me. "Now you understand the show we were on. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a test, to see how far we'd go before breaking." Maria turned to us. "If this goes public, the country won't just panic. It'll implode." Keanu didn't hesitate. "Then let it. People deserve truth, not comfort." But before we could discuss the next move, we heard the metallic thud of boots outside the church. Infrared lights danced along the walls. They had found us. "Get ready," Keanu said, locking eyes with me. "Because the next part of this story will be written in blood." The church trembled as boots stormed the gravel above, and the thick concrete trapdoor separating us from the outside rattled with each step. Keanu handed me a loaded Glock, his voice steady but low. "No more running." Maria quickly slid the encrypted drive into a fireproof pouch and shoved it inside my vest. "If I die, you run," she said sharply. "But this information must make it out. The world must know." I barely had time to nod when an explosion shattered the trapdoor, sending shards of wood and dust raining down. A black-clad mercenary dropped in first, silenced rifle scanning the darkness. He never saw Keanu coming. With terrifying speed, Keanu lunged and disarmed him, snapping the man's neck with a brutal twist. Gunfire erupted from above, and Tucker Carlson, of all people, rolled out from behind a column, firing back with military precision I didn't know he had. "I used to work deep state before I woke up," he muttered, reloading. "Long story. But this was more than just a hit team. It was cleansing protocol. They wanted no witnesses, no evidence, no trace." A voice echoed down the stairwell again, this time unmistakably Obama's. "Stand down, Keanu, you don't know what you're playing with." Keanu shouted back, "I do, and that's why I'll burn it all." At that moment, one of the attackers tossed a gas canister down the stairwell. Maria dove on it without hesitation, using her own body to absorb the explosion. The blast rocked the chamber, but her sacrifice gave us a precious few seconds to retreat into a secret tunnel behind the altar. The walls were tight, damp, and lined with decades-old prayer books. "They always underestimated the faithful," Keanu said, almost to himself as we rushed forward. When we emerged, we were miles away, inside a forgotten cemetery lined with mausoleums. But a black SUV waited, engine running. From the passenger seat stepped a figure no one expected, Michelle Obama. "Get in, we don't have much time," she said. Keanu hesitated. "Why are you helping us?" She looked exhausted. "Because even I didn't know what Barack became after the second term. I read the Lazarus files too. He stopped being my husband a long time ago." With no time to argue, we climbed in. As we drove, she explained everything. How Barack had been approached years ago by a global group called the Horizon Pact, a secret elite manipulating media, politics, even religion. Lazarus was their tool to rewrite truth in real time. They plan to use you, Keanu, as the final keystone, America's most trusted man, Michelle said. But you broke the mold. You started asking too many questions. They couldn't control you, so they tried to destroy you. We arrived at an old broadcasting tower in Virginia, abandoned but still functional. This was the backup plan, Michelle said. We leaked the files from here. It can't be blocked. As we climbed the tower, Keanu handed me the pouch. You do it, he said. You're the only one who hasn't been compromised. I nodded and connected the drive, watching the files begin to upload to every major global news outlet simultaneously. It was working. But then, everything froze. A power surge. The screens glitched, the lights dimmed, and a digital face appeared. Obama. Not a video. An AI. You really thought I'd let you win? The synthetic voice asked, cold and void of emotion. This is no longer about one man. I am the system. Now. Keanu's fists clenched. Then we'll break the system. The AI laughed. Game over? You're still playing level 1? As sparks flew and the tower shook violently, Michelle screamed, We've been traced. I grabbed Keanu's arm. There's still one final move left. He looked at me, fire in his eyes. Then let's end this. The tower trembled like a dying beast as the AI's voice echoed from every terminal, its face flickering across shattered screens, cold, digital, and no longer fully human. Obama had become something else, something constructed, a self-aware weapon that controlled more than just narratives now. Michelle gripped the terminal, trying to reroute the transmission, but the system was being overridden line by line. We have less than a minute before it locks us out forever, she said, sweat beading down her forehead. I looked at Keanu. He wasn't shaking. He was thinking. He reached into his jacket and pulled out something I'd never seen before. This isn't just a data war, he whispered. They forgot I grew up in systems, arcade machines, analog. It was an old-school analog trigger, a portable EMP he'd custom-built with a group of rogue engineers he once saved in Argentina. This won't destroy Lazarus, he said, but it'll fry its link long enough for a full dump of the files. The world will see it all, no edits, no filter. But there was a cost. The EMP radius would wipe every device within 100 meters, ours too. Once activated, we'd lose contact with the outside. No escape route, no backup, no way to know if the files even made it. I offered to do it. I'm the nobody, if something happens. But Keanu stopped me. No, they started this with my face, it ends with it. He turned to Michelle. You said I was the keystone? Fine. Let them see what happens when the keystone breaks the wall. Without another word, he pressed the trigger. There was no dramatic explosion, just a single pulse, silent and invisible. Instantly, the screens went black. The humming servers fell quiet. The AI face vanished mid-sentence, then nothing. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. Michelle was frozen, staring into the void. I ran to the rooftop with my satellite backup radio, praying something had made it through. Static. Then, a voice. This is BBC World Service. We are currently receiving a flood of classified documents. Mass exposure of a global media operation involving multiple heads of state. President Obama named in the files. Keanu Reeves appears to be at the center. My legs gave out. It worked. The entire planet was now watching the real truth. Within the hour, panic erupted across media networks. CNN's feed was hijacked by citizen groups reading out exposed documents. MSNBC anchors walked off live, refusing to be puppets any longer. Fox News went eerily silent. Tucker Carlson's own past had been rewritten, and now even he didn't know who he was anymore. Meanwhile, protests ignited in cities worldwide. We believed in him, one woman sobbed outside the White House, but he wasn't real. He was manufactured hope. And in the chaos of the fallout, Keanu disappeared. No one saw him leave the tower. Some said he was taken. Others believed he sacrificed himself. But then, weeks later, I received a package. No return address. Just a USB and a handwritten note. The system will rebuild, but so will we. Tell them to keep watching. K. I uploaded the final clip, Keanu, staring directly into the camera before the EMP blast. His last words, "You deserve the truth, even if it burns." It became the most watched video in history. The Lazarus Project was gone. Obama's legacy collapsed. And somewhere I knew Keanu was still watching, still protecting, because the war wasn't truly over, it had just gone underground. But this time, the people were awake. Please subscribe channel for Keanu Reeves respect. Thanks.